G'day and welcome back to my channel. And look, the IMAI Junk is finished. All the rigging is in, everything's done. I know in the previous video I said this, but you're actually going to see it all done in this video. I will be doing all of this running rigging. That's what's in this video. So I mean, if you didn't like the last one because you don't like string, you don't like knots and you don't like junk, you're really going to hate this video. But hopefully those of you that have been following the series and been asking me to show all the rigging in detail, you'll get something out of this. So let's get on with the build. Roll the music. Before I glue my sail into place and then it's locked, and you do have to glue these sails onto the mast, it's a bit annoying. I mean, my other ships, I let them hang free and use all the rigging to hold in place. But I tried that with the mainsail, and once I actually undid the clamping, everything collapsed. So yeah, you got to glue. It's because they're so big and heavy, they're all made of plastic. Anyhow, we now have my big eye needle, right? And it is ready to go in a little hole that is in the sail up here. I can find the bloody thing. Right, go straight through there, and I'm just going to do a little test on this. So straight through, okay, and then I'm just going to do a very light knot, one that I can undo if I decide I'm changing my mind. Okay, I'm literally doing a dry fit of the rigging. This is to make sure, is this the best position for my sail? So with that sort of lightly in place there, okay, I'll then do what we will do with the rigging, is that it will then go through the one of these that sits to that side, just that one. It threads through fairly easily, and this is why you do a dry fit. Alright, so testing that now. Yep, that's pulling to there, that's nice. This comes down here, so what it does is it goes through underneath here. So what you can do is you can actually use your great big long needle to push right through the other side of the boat, pull it through, and then bring it back carefully. So you probably didn't see any of that. I literally went through here and then came around the other side by going through the other side of the boat. So that makes life a bit easier. And then this comes up to the other one of the little black blocks. Let's see if it'll pull through on this one. Yeah, pulls through on that one, no problems at all. But it is a good idea to always check that your blocks aren't jammed, which I normally do. Normally I run a little, on the wood ships I always run a drill bit through all my blocks. And there's a hole over here somewhere. There it is. And through we go. And now we get an idea of what that piece of rigging is going to be like. If it wasn't fitting, I could raise the sail a little bit and then reclamp it, see how that looks, or even lower it a bit, although eventually it's not going to fit on the it's not going to fit into place. And then I can double check. So by doing this now, faffing around, I'm going to save myself a lot of heartache later, because once that sail is glued to that mast, that's going to be it. That's going to be the choice. So I'm pretty happy with that height. That gives me all the geometry I want. I'm going to glue that in and let it set overnight, and then I can do this rigging in earnest. It's overnight and the sail hopefully is now set in position, so I'll remove the clamps. Let's see if it falls down. Shouldn't. Here we go. And actually, you notice we've got a bit of rotation there too from the mounting is not as fixed as the other ones. But that's fine, that looks quite good. So I'm happy with that. I've already put a little bit of glue on that joint there. So now it's a matter of gluing this one up. Before I do that, I'm just going to tighten things a bit. So let's have a feel here. This sort of worries me, it's banging against that one, but I think that'll be fine. That'll be okay. Also here, even though the hole is a little bit further back for the string, right, you might notice, the hole is actually set back a bit. I think this works a lot better when it's actually tied to the end of the bamboo, because you get more of a lift up of the lift. And so you get that sort of effect, which is what I really wanted. Whereas just moving it that 2 millimeters further, it doesn't quite lift as well. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, I'm now going to tie this off, glue this in, and we'll get on with the rest of the rigging. Lifts are glued in now, so that's good. They're lifts, and there's kind of like clue lines here. I don't know. Well, maybe not. Maybe what we're doing now is a clue line. They're really not the same as what I'm used to, so we'll call those lifts. I think what we're going to do now is a clue line, because it basically is at the sides here, and it doesn't raise the sail. See, a clue line will raise the sail, and a sheet line drops the sail. Yeah, it's all a bit weird. A little bit weird. I think this is more like a brace, because it really will angle the sail, but it's a W shape, or an M shape, which is just absurd. But anyhow, we'll persevere on. Now, I've got the rigging diagram down here, and I've got this handy little thing that I actually mount instructions on, which is always good, because then I can have it sitting there right in front of me for reference all the time. Now, how long a piece of cordage do we need? Well, so if we have a look at our rigging diagram, we start down here, and it's an M shape, and it starts basically here where that one falls, so we can tie it there. We won't have to put another loop because we've already got one. It'll kind of look a bit crowded with two. No need, although technically there would be another little, sort of loop of string. You can put two if you like. I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to tie there, go up to the block there, then it comes down and ties around here. I never liked this point, because that to me feels like it could just rip off fairly easily, but maybe those posts go right into the hull and they're kind of strong. So we tie off to that post, up to this little block up here, this pulley block, and then we come down and we tie to this little rail joint here, which would be fairly strong. It's close to the hull. That would be a quite strong sort of railing mechanism. All right, so that is our M. Let's have a go. And here's the final part of our M shape. And again, I can do this trick where I go all the way through here. And then using my big needle, make sure I go back without tangling around another post, of course. So all the way back. And then that's around there. And then I can knot it off. So this big needle, although you've got to watch where your string goes, but that happens anyway. This big needle is really handy for doing all this sort of thing. So all I've got to do now is tie that off. And you'll notice also, remember how I said this is a bit wobbly? Well, if I pull this a bit tighter, I can actually get it to draw up, and then it sits still. Right? Now it's not going to move. Okay, I will knot this off, and then we'll move on to the next bit of rigging. Now our last line for this sail is to run off these bottom blocks. And there's one on either end. But we'll just do this block, and that block. So we'll do every one on the starboard side for the moment. So we start down here on this little rail, and I've already made up my cordage with one of my loops ready to go. So I'd stuck one on there that I made separately and glued in place, because it was just too hard to try and do a loop in situ. So I just finished that line that we did previously and glued on a loop, and you'll never know. Shh, don't tell anybody. So that's ready to go. So that loops in there. Well, we tie it off in there, goes up to our pulley block there, goes all the way back to about the middle here where the mast is. Okay, so about there again, far side of that. From there, it's going to go up to that pulley block, and then it's going to come all the way back down here to these belay pins, lock off on probably the second one from the back, right, because that one's used and that one's used, so we'll pick one of these two in the middle here. And then from that belay pin, it goes all the way to the stern onto that pulley block on the mizzen sail, right? And from there it then goes down and it ties off on this back railing here. So yeah, so it's an M&M. It's two. So from there to there, to there, to there, to there, to there, to there. Let's hope I can remember that. And let's tie it off now. So our sheet line is in place from the little loop there, up into the block there, cross down. Didn't need to do another loop there, I'm cheating, I'm just running it through. It's just a running line into the block, down, loop through and tied on the belay point, running through into that block and tied off on the rear rail. That's it, one continuous piece. It actually does all three sails. At least it does it for this side, because this is the starboard side. What we need to do now is the very first bit of rigging on the port, because we haven't done any rigging on the port side at all, none whatsoever. So now we're going to take the bottom of that yard on that sail, the bottom of that one and the bottom of this one, and we will be rigging those same M&M and M&M line, and then she'll be finished. So finally, after 3 months, which is pretty quick for me, the junk is finished. All the rigging's in, and have you seen just those running lines. Now, I did make a slight change because I realised our little M&Ms, right, and they were fine. And when I went to the other side, on the port side, did the M&Ms, and the port side pulleys attached to the port side. And this got me thinking, these ones over here, this M-shaped one, which is basically sort of a brace, right, to all intents and purposes. Well, I had it originally going down to here because the rigging instructions are quite vague. And then I thought, you know, there's so little on the far side, on the port side there, and really it made much more sense for after this block to go down. So I did that. I've taken that line from here and I've run it down here, the same here. I've taken the line at the top there onto this side. I had to do it anyway here at the stern for the mizzen. So all of those lines on the port side now actually come down to a port side place where they get tied. It makes a lot more sense, and I think that looks good. I think that really works. I'm happy with that. So that's good, and that makes this side a little more interesting with the rigging, because really it was devoid of any rigging at all. So what can I say about this build? Well, it is a lot of fun. It's a fairly easy kit to build. There's really nothing really tricky in it, but it's kind of quirky and interesting. So I didn't mind the fact that it was pretty well sort of click together basic kit, because I had a lot of fun changing things and doing the painting of it. Interestingly, it is out of the box except for a little bit of brown string. Right? That's it. Everything else that you see here was from the kit. All this cordage was in the kit. Everything was in the kit. Oh, there is a little brass right down in here, and I hadn't really talked about this. There's a tiny little brass eyelet, because this stay line here, which holds this mast sort of forward, they had it tying off here on this rail. Now that's a stupid place. There's no way. If that's tied off in there and the wind blows whatever, that'll rip the whole thing out. I mean, I was dubious about tying off around here, but I suppose if those posts go deep into the hull, they'd have some strength. So I've always got to sort of think of how the ship actually works. So I ended up putting a little eyelet down here, which would be into a beam that's underneath the deck. That would be strong, and that little brass eyelet allowed me to put a little bit of a adjuster piece. I put a double piece there so they can, you know, adjust it up, drop it down, whatever they need to do. And that strengthens that, because that is the only forward stay in the entire ship. And even then, they often didn't need them. They often took them off. So that's probably why they thought they're tied on there. The rigging guide is a bit sort of ambiguous in that all the lines seem to come here to the starboard side. But if you sort of think about it logically, the lifts, yeah, they've got to come down because they come down in a V to one spot, sure. But the braces here, right, this M-shaped thing, well, yeah, braces go to either side of the boat because you can swing these sails around. So the port side of the brace from the port bit, right, goes across, and the starboard side goes to the starboard side, right? Just the same as the sheet lines down here. They go starboard to starboard, port to port. That makes much more nautical sense, and I was much happier doing it that way. So that's about probably the only thing you got to watch out for is, you know, check your rigging. You can try and look at photos, but most of the photos online are of modern junks, and there are a much more modern rig. Some of them even have ratlines and shrouds, you know. It's just absurd. That wasn't on the ancient rig. So if you want the ancient rig, you really got to hunt around for diagrams, and I did find a few, so that gave me a bit of a hint. But if they're just side-on pics, you're not quite sure if this line goes to port or starboard. But I think what I've done works, and I'm really happy with that look. There you go, the junk is done. Now, if you have enjoyed this series, and you're one of the few that's watched it, because it hasn't been super popular in the numbers, but I know those of you that took the time to watch it, you have enjoyed it. You've told me so. So that is very rewarding in itself. Now look, you can pay me back by hitting these buttons, and these buttons are last video made. That's it. Just click one of them. Something should happen. Who knows? It'll certainly push the algorithm, and it might get a few more people watching this series of videos, because I think I've done some of my best work here. And it's a shame that people are put off by, you know, shy knees, or the fact that it's called junk, or that it's a basic MA kit. They're not seeing, well, they're not realising this is modelling. Anyhow, there you go. And of course, you can always buy me a curry. That'll be really good. Yeah, well. Anyhow, we'll end this video with a bit more of my Chinese music, although I know some of you are going, oh no. Look, just put your fingers in your ears if you don't like it. I'll get the banjo out. I warn you, I'll get the banjo out. So, here we go. Here's a montage of photos of the completed build. And that's it. The junk is finished. So, it's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.